welcome to another edition of Mortgage Talks. I'm your host, Adam Hires. Remember, download your free business transformation playbook at hirescoaching.com. Explode your business today. Okay, we have another phenomenal guest on today. I am just, very grateful that he said that he'd be on here with me. And, it's always gratitude to the highest order when I have just, great producers, just, someone that's got a mind for business and just a true passion and a giving nature. And this guy is very giving, and we'll go into the story where we met here in a little bit, but I wanted him to introduce himself. And this is Will. Will, reintroduce yourself.
Yes. And thank you by the way, for the awesome introduction. I hope I live up to the words.
You will.
And I'm honored to actually be on, so I really do appreciate it. So my name is Will Caban, also known as Will Caban, the Mortgage Man, across pretty much every platform.
Boom.
I'm a loan originator down in Miami, and been in the business now for roughly, I would say, going on 9 years. And we're actually just talking about some backstory.
Yeah.
But been on what I call the dark side for about 4.5 years now. So for anybody that knows the history of Adam, and it probably doesn't know the history between both of us, but I used to work for the most part, at banks. And I actually met Adam at 4.5 years ago, was it? Was it about four and a half years? Yeah. So we met each other at at this point, it wasn't a recruiting session. We actually were employees for the same company, actually Movement Mortgage.
Yep.
By the way, it's a phenomenal company. And I remember, we were talking about how you got into coaching and how it was befitting of you. So when we first met each other, I had just come from the banking world, right? I didn't know what to expect. Or I think the naivety was, it's going to be as easy as it is in banking, because let's call a spade. When you're at a bank, your clients come from a different referral source than they normally do in our side of the business.
Right.
So I wasn't really prepared at that point for what dynamically would be the rest of my career for the last 4.5 years. And I remember, kind of sharing those thoughts, because everybody, we have big producers, you being one of them, and just everybody sharing those thoughts, all different walks of life, all different places. We're talking everywhere. And I remember, bringing that self-doubt to kind of the forefront. And I was like, man, I don't know, man. You spend a week with somebody and a bunch of somebody's, and you're going to start, you're going to start feeling some sort of way, because you don't have the production. You don't know what, people are doing. You're in the middle of class, people are taking phone calls. And I'm like, man, I don't have any of that type of business. I don't know what I'm doing. Right? Taking applications in the middle of the training. And I just remember you had that way about you where it's like, man, don't worry, brother. You're going to get in there. You're going to rock and roll. You're going to do it. And it was, you talk about giving, that was the platform that I was introduced to, right? When I met you, when I met pretty much everybody, at Movement at the time. So it's kind of befitting that you're a coach now, because in a sense, I saw that, right?
Yeah.
In the very, very beginning stages, that you just had that. And it was just with me. It was with everybody pretty much in that class. It was just like, hey, look, just go out, go do it. Just go rock and roll. And, from that onset, as I followed you and continue to follow you, I saw, and still do see that you produce at, a level where most people have a lot of anxiety and trouble producing at, but you do it naturally, because you're just an actual nice guy, right? You're just a giving human. And I think in this business, that aspect of it goes a long way. So, major tangent, but I think it's important to preface that, because when I met you in a place where I wasn't producing, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know what production was. I didn't know how this business can change people's lives.
Yeah.
So there was a big dynamic in that where, fast forward 4.5 years later, I'm extremely grateful for the experience of, where I've been, the people I've met, because I honestly feel like those are a big part of why I am now and where I'm going. So, kudos to you and thank you. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you creating the platform.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Very humbling words. I appreciate it. Definitely, definitely humbling to hear those words. And it's funny because uh, so 4.5 years ago, when I was at Movement, see, I some for some people that don't know, like I did loans for like maybe a couple years, like previous, like 2005, 2006, seven area, but like I didn't do much. Like I was doing enough to live, but I wasn't really. I had a lot of other things going on. I was powerlifting, and so powerlifting was my whole world. And it's kind of like, and I had no idea how much money you could make in mortgages. Like if somebody,
Oh yeah,
I wish I could go back and slap the absolute crap out of me and go, God, dude, like you could absolutely. This is crazy how much money you can make. And so I had no
oh, it is.
idea. And so I was selling. I was working at Ashley Furniture as I was running a store, and then I was like, oh, I'm gonna go be a mortgage loan officer. And so when I saw you, I'd started already getting applications because I was like, okay, I gotta just,
Yeah,
dude, I just gotta go out there and get it. But like I
I
was,
remember that.
yeah.
I remember that distinctively. I remember that.
So I was just trying to speak in. I was speaking into existence for both of us. Like we're gonna crush it. We're gonna do fine. It's gonna be good. And it's kind of funny because it did for both of us. We uh, were successful, and when I talked to you, I saw that you're going to be successful. You are a genuine guy. You're intelligent.
Thank
You're well
thank you.
spoken,
I
driven. You could
appreciate
just
that.
tell all that thing. Those are gonna work. And as I've watched you, it's kind of funny because there's all these classmates we kind of kind of like for a little bit we followed, and then you could just tell like, man, I don't know if they're even been in the mortgage industry for a while, and some of them aren't, like, right, or some are really
Yeah,
not. They had to go back to banking because they don't know how to get their own business, and they don't know how to brand themselves
exactly.
and all these things, right? But for you, when I'm watching you, and I even reached out at one point, like probably about 2 years ago, I was like, dude, freaking blowing up on your Instagram, and and you're doing well, and it's you got such a good branding about you, and you got good amount of followers, and I think that you're getting business from Instagram as well. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. So Instagram actually became a platform that I used after trying to, you know, trying to key down with Facebook. Um, but I started to realize that Instagram for me and for my market was a little bit more of a catch it, right? In every single market, things are different, right? I think you got to be on it pretty much every single platform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you can also pick which platform you want to really go deep with,
Yep.
right? Because sometimes going wide with something, you can just lose context.
Right.
And there was a big point for me where I would buy books and try to figure out how can I manipulate the Facebook algorithm, which you really can't. You just have to engage. You have to be responsive. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
conversational, and then there's certain things about it that you can that benefit you and kind of afford things to work in your favor. So Facebook for me was a platform in the beginning. It still is a platform now, but I realized that there was a good formula that you can pretty much follow with most platforms, and it was show who you are, right, as a person, be genuine, um, with some caveats and some rules. You don't want to get too deep into certain things, um, but then you want to salt and pepper what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what we do, quite honestly, it's very much there's very little separation and division between me as a loan officer and me as a father, or me as a loan officer and me as a husband, right? Because in full capacity, and I know you share the same thoughts, I'm a provider, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of me being a provider is showing the world as an entrepreneur and someone who has to go and get their business and wakes up every single day, starting with a blank check. I have to go figure it out, just like you have to go figure it out. Just anyone, watching this or is going to watch this has to go and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about that for a second, it's scary, right? Like it could be very scary. Like you have no basis to start off of. So what do you do and where do you go? And I think a lot of what people tend to do is they tend to like immediately go to friends and family which is, depending on what side of the fence you're on, what school of thought you're on, it's not a bad idea. But you also have platforms that we've never had prior, to where we are now, that can put your voice on a pedestal and kind of, be an engine, so to speak, for people to get to know you, not just you as a business person, but I think more importantly, you as a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
What values do you hold? What do you hold true? And what's important to you, right? And we see time and time again. It's the things where you can do it right, you can do it wrong, and
Right.
I think the right way to do it is really to salt and pepper, what you do for a living, how you affect people's lives. If you're gonna throw up, hey, I just closed a deal, that's great, but why? What was so substantial about it? What was the context of it? How did you change someone's life, right? Build a story around it. That's not centered around you, but it's centered around that
Bam.
person.
Yes.
And when you do that, when I started to really like conceptualize this, I didn't look at marketing books for Facebook and Instagram anymore. What I started to look at was how do I get really good at copyright? How do I get really good at storytelling? How do I get really good at separating myself from the scenario and putting someone in there as the hero? And
Love it. Love it.
when I started to do that, that's when I feel the business started to really take off in the sense of, social media. And then for me, Instagram just became fun. And the reason why it was fun is because you can kind of, it's less of a, it's more of a kind of, and I'm going to sound really cheesy when I say this, but it's more of an artistic outlet, if you want to call it
Mm-hmm.
that, than Facebook is for me, because, I grew up with Facebook, right? I think,
Yep.
Facebook is 10 or some odd years old. So is Instagram. Instagram just made 10 years old, but I haven't been on Instagram for all that time. I've been on Facebook for a lot longer. So a lot of people know me before I started in the mortgage business. And a lot of people, you, and I'm pretty sure it's the same with you. You have a lot of your friends and family who kind of like nudge at you, or like, dude, I get it. You're the mortgage man, right? You do mortgages. Like that's amazing. But the truth is, yeah, I do mortgages, but that's a big part of my life. Just like, my children are, and just like my wife is, and my family, and, my pets. And it's a big part of my life. And the reason why it's a big part of my life is because, it's a demanding job. There's no doubt about it. It's a very demanding job. Contrary to what a lot of people may think, it does require a lot. Requires you to know how to deal with stress. And a big dynamic of that is you have to be able to identify with what you do for a living. Now, I'm happy that I get to do this. I didn't know. I mean, we were talking about 4.5 years ago. I was naive to how you could change people's lives. Yeah, there's a ton of money you can make in this business, and you could even, there's a ton of ways that you can make residuals in that business too, by growing teams and doing all those things. And time was the biggest teacher in allowing me to learn that those are just requisites, right?
Mm.
And then once you get into like the nitty gritty of the business, when you have a social media platform that you can create that is your voice, then you become more conscious of the fact that, hey, this is something that's important. And it grew progressively, right? Like where people were like, oh, you're Will Caban, right? Yeah, you're the mortgage guy, right? Then it became, hey, you're the mortgage man, right? And I never, if anybody ever met me in person, I never, say, hey, I'm Will Caban, the mortgage man. I never do it because to me it's silly. But it's become so ingrained in my videos, and when I talk about things, it's like you'll know immediately in my first couple of seconds of a video if I'm going to talk about something mortgage or real estate related, just by my introduction. Hey guys, Will Caban, the mortgage man, or hey guys, Will Caban. It's a great Saturday afternoon. Just wanted to share this with you. Take a look at my dog. We're walking. So like nice. Building the context of brand was really important, but it wasn't until this year that I really went full force with the branding, because I felt, if I'm going to take my business to the next level, branding had to be a big part of it. So to kind of bring it back, I started to be less concerned about how to try to manipulate, or I guess a better word would be how to try to make the social media platforms work better for me. And I tried to start working on how do I get better at content? How do I get better at storytelling? How do I get better at, the small things? Like and that's where, I studied copywriting. I studied true marketing, right? How to write ads. I mean, if you ever gone, see, and I know we've all done this, right? You go to a website where it's one of those deep dive websites where it just keeps going and keeps going, and at the end they're going to try to sell you like $1,000 program, which in the end could be very much worthwhile because the copyright that was associated with it, if it's factual, which it should always be, right? If it kept you content for that long and you went through everything and your emotions were really driven, then that right there is the core of, marketing.
Yeah.
And you could do that. I mean, it's been around since forever. And you do that, you do it long form. You could do it on mailers. You can do it on Facebook. You can do it on Instagram. So I tried to choose a platform or a few platforms, and thank God it worked out, and I did get business, and I still do get business from it. So it's been good, thank God.
Yeah, I want to get into a few things. Wow, yes, great content here for the listeners. This is why I want to join, because you're bringing the heat, you're bringing the fire.
Thanks,
And if you out there don't think he's bringing the fire, then wake up. I don't know. Go walk around, go jump around, get some energy, and re-listen, because man, he's bringing some heat right here that you can take in your business. So, I was just talking to, we got a podcast going to drop before yours, and the brand doctor, and talking about the brand.
Yeah.
We're talking about, and he's great, right? And we hit that same point, and it's like this is the point that keeps coming forward is a story, and yours like, how can they be the hero, right? And so, like, if you're out there, like, and this is maybe the second or third time that you've really heard this on my podcast, get it through your thick skull, right? Like, it's not about you, that you just sold a house, or you just did a loan, or you just gave this great presentation to somebody, you sold them this great product. That's not what it's about, because it's very selfish. That's very that it's about you, and it's not supposed to be about you. It's supposed to be about your clients winning, and telling that story. Because if you can be, just like Will really honed in on, is that being that great storyteller, that copyright. And if people are going to listen to that all the way through, and you're going deep with that client, and you're deep with that story, people are going to go deep with you, and then they're going to buy from you. They're going to want to use you, all those things. And so you really make sure that you get that point home, and from this point forward, stop telling stories about how great you are, or whatever award you won, or hey, I just closed another deal. Like, nobody really cares about that stuff. It's really at some point it's like, man, how much you going to brag about you just closed something, right? It's okay to if you get some award once in a while, and humble brag and stuff once in a while, that's okay. But that should be a very sprinkled in mix to, people are going to know that, you don't have to tell people you're successful when you're telling clients stories, for example, and you're going deep with that they're being successful. They understand that you helped them, and it's not a mystery that you're doing good things. So you don't have to go out there and, I closed another deal, nobody cares. And so that's really good.
Yeah.
I love that. Those storylines you had. And I kind of, there's so much there. I feel like I was just intently listening. So I was not listening to respond, and I'm missing a few points that you put in there that I wanted to, I think that I could go back on, but there's a lot of great content there. And how many, so you said you've now started gaining business from this. What do you how many loans do you think you close per month, or anything on you correlate to social media platform?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna correlate it to two things. To like direct to client, right? So the actual end user, somebody that comes to me either asking questions, getting pre-approved, or just going through the entire process, right? Mm-hmm. I would probably equate at least one deal a month to that. Now, in the context of things, that may not sound like a lot, but my business predominantly is purchase-based business. So year to date, I think I'm at 25 million, right? But it's all purchase based. Mm-hmm. The business that I do get, that's refinance. I've only done about 6 or 7 refinances, and it's, believe it or not, most of it has come from social media. So I don't necessarily talk about it in the context because there's certain facets of refinances, and you know this, that are difficult, right?
Right.
They're not like purchase transactions. They're very, very different. They're very unique. And, I know there's a division in the industry that says, oh, you're nothing if you do refis, and then they're like, oh, if you're only purchase based, then so there's a division. I'm very much in the thought of, hey, you gotta be balanced in your business, right? It's foolish if you don't go chase the business that's out there and you're serving somebody and you're actually giving them a good service. That's a good story right there. Hey, I took you from 4.75 to 3.5 or 2.99 or whatever it is, but in the bigger scheme of things, I saved you X number of dollars. That's the story right there, and that's how you attract other people to you, because now you're telling people, hey, I didn't do this. What you're doing is you're reflecting on how is a benefit to that person. So for me, it's been more or less about I'd say one client, direct client, right? And the beautiful thing about that is that I get to refer that back to whoever I want,
Right.
and be in a position where I can, work with an agent that I choose with, that client and that borrower. And sometimes it's a mix and a match of, different personalities.
Right.
But where it really has dynamically, like, just completely changed my business is with my referral agents. A lot of my referral agents in time, right? And if we take the platform and we go progressively through time, what's happened through time is I went to a point where I was making videos pretty consistently. I mean, I was making videos about just everything. And, for anybody that's listening, the best content is the content that your clients ask, right? The questions that your clients ask. Like, take the simple questions that they ask, right? And you can turn that into a video content. Like, if you want it to be succinct, then you write something down, you make your point, and you're done. Choose your platform, right? Before Instagram, IGTV came out and stories came out, we only had the platform to basically make videos for up to a minute, right?
Yeah.
And then it progressively got better. So we had to get better at making videos in a minute, because making a video in a minute is not easy when you want to stay on task and
Right.
you want to make your point. So, as the platform grew, my content kind of grew with it as well. And one of the things that I really got interested in and I started entertaining was, I'm getting a lot of questions about certain things that are, unique to my market. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about, can you have two FHA loans in one? Can you have two FHA loans at once? I think to date, that's probably one of my most trended YouTube videos, and we'll get into YouTube too. The other is, about condos and things that are specific about your area, because the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to go too, again, wide, right?
Right.
You want to talk about your area. So if your area is predominantly single family homes or townhomes or condos, and that's what you specialize in, talk about it. If your area is predominantly VA, right? For a while, I was going very, very deep into VA because I have a soft spot for veterans. I know you do too. We constantly get, beat up with listing agents and just agents in general that just have a very big misguided understanding of how that works. So for a long time, that's what I was catering to, and that's what I was talking about, especially when I was at Movement. It was because it was passion, right? Something I cared about. Talk about things you care about. If you don't care for the business and you try to be successful and it's forced, you're probably not going to be successful, right? It's just something that you have to care about what you do, and you have to genuinely want to communicate. So taking those little questions, I said, you know what? I got something here, right?
Yeah.
I would go to underwriting. I'd ask them the question. Underwriting would come back, and Movement has phenomenal underwriting help desk, and they come back with a whole bunch of stuff. And I remember because I wrote that video when I was at Movement.
Okay.
And I went into the context of can you have two FHA loans at once? I didn't know you could, right? And it was a new thing, and I researched it, made sure that I covered every single topic, and then when I went into the video content, basically I was answering the client's question.
Yeah.
By answering that question, I was answering a whole bunch of now literally thousands of people's questions with the intention of just, hey, maybe I could help somebody else out. Yeah. And then from that, what had spawned is I had agents reach out to me, and, they would ask me questions, and I'd answer the questions and never ask for business, right?
Right.
I would just basically say, hey, I really appreciate that you reached out to me. Would you be out,
Mm.
open to have a coffee? I'm very big on coffee meetings when pre-COVID, mainly because in your market it's probably the same, and everyone's market's a little bit different. But lunch in Miami is, it's like it's super high paced, right?
Yeah.
So if I go take somebody out for lunch, chances are my days, our
Yeah.
days go crazy
Yeah.
during the middle of the day. Their days probably less crazy, but it's still like, there's just too
I,
much action going on.
what I've found is too is like there's more fallout on lunches, right? Because it's like all of a sudden
Yes,
they start thinking about it. It's like, man, that's a long, like you said, man, I got this big day, and they're like, oh, man, I don't really know him, like especially like a man to a woman, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know this guy. Like I'm gonna like, a coffee,
yeah,
like I can get out in and out in 10, 15 minutes. Lunch is like 45 minutes. Like I don't know,
true,
right? So
it's
I think
100%.
I'm the same way. It's like lunch. It's like and even for me, I'm like I don't even know if I'm gonna like them either. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
trust me,
that's it.
I
It's
turn away
true.
realtors. I'm like, oh god, I don't want to deal with them. They're a hot mess, right? Like no way,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
way. It goes both ways. Trust me.
It's
Uh,
no, it's the truth. It's the absolute truth. And that was where and guys, like, the one thing you would learn about me is I go off on these crazy tangents, but I promise that there's should be some value in there. But the truth is when I started to see that realtors would reach out to me, at first I wasn't really capitalizing on it, right? I was just like, okay, cool, this person's reaching out to me, yeah, we become
yeah,
friends, blah blah blah. But then after a while, I started to say, you know what, I have this nice mix of people that that engage with me, and I engage with them. How do I shift this to a position of you know being lucrative for me? And lucrative, it doesn't necessarily mean money, right?
no,
I can tell you right now that I've had agents that I've never worked with because they're so in bed and so dedicated to the lenders that they're working with, and I sincerely appreciate that and I respect that. That I would ask them, hey, I'm, you know, this is like literally a line that I would tell them, I'm pretty sure that you have your first and your second lender that you work with. I'd be glad to be the third lender in that place if anything ever falls through. But in the event that I'm not, or if that's not an option, if you know anybody that's in the same position as you as a realtor that maybe doesn't have a relationship, or the relationship is not going as well as it should, I'd be more than happy if you can make an introduction and just talk to them for a little bit. See what I'm not going to ask them for any business. I just want to get to know them. They get to know me. See what they're doing. See what I'm doing, and maybe pick their brains about some things. And it was really from a place of I want to give before I get. Right. So when
right,
I sit down with an agent, um, I would just ask them about every life. Like, how long have you lived in Miami? Are you from Miami? Do you when you came here, what was the difficulties that you had, and things like that. So there were those situations basically presented themselves where I would have those conversations and then learn from them, and then be able to use that as a catapult for me so that I can basically be in a position to give back either to them if they had any questions. And we would leave it like that. Hey, if you have any questions about anything, I don't expect that if you ever give me a phone call about another file that I'm ever going to ask you for a loan. That's been true for years, and it's never changed. I never will ask. And not because I don't want to. I think there's a negative
oh yeah,
connotation that's like, oh, well, you're not hungry enough. Oh, so no, I'm not. Not that I'm not hungry enough. It's that I'm in a position where I want to come from a place of giving.
yeah.
Adam, hold on 1 second, bud. My daughter.
Hey, this is real life.
Yeah, yeah. Just give me 2 seconds, man. I'm so sorry. Yeah. So this is one of the products of working from home with
It's
COVID.
all good. It's all
So
good.
so my apologies. But
No,
what I was saying is, coming from a place where I really genuinely wanted to give something, right? I feel like a lot of loan officers, and I know that. I mean, I can't tell. I haven't studied this stats and pre-COVID, post-COVID, but a lot of people are doing really well now, right? Um, pre-COVID, we were scared. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was really scared. Like, I didn't know what was gonna happen. I was in banking when I was in when the last pandemic, well, not pandemic, but the last down cycle hit in 2008, and had just started in finance. But I was single, I had no kids, and I had a salary that I was living off of that was based off of a salary when I was like a broke college kid, and I learned to kind of finesse living through that, right? And now, going into this early in the year, we didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, the year prior, rates were super high, right? In the same year, we made history. We hit benchmark highs and benchmark lows, like in the same year. The business was crazy, and the things that were driving it up until the point of COVID were, for the most part, pretty consistent. And then COVID hit, and then it was like, wow, am I going to sustain myself, right? Because all of my business is referral based, all of it. And it was at that point where I realized, and this is a very important factor, I realized, A, I was scared to death. There's no doubt about it. I'm not going to lie about that, sugarcoat it, as I think a lot of people were. And B, I turned to social media immediately. And I did it because I knew that it had worked, and it worked for me when I was just getting into it and starting and continuously building my business. And as soon as I turned back to like really, really heavy social media, business just like that, it just took off all over again. Yeah. And the point that I'm trying to make with saying that is the avenues of business that came from that were multifaceted, right? We had the real estate agents, I had the CPAs, I had the attorneys, clients, past clients, I mean, people that I haven't spoken to for a while that just reached out, hey, I just saw you did a video about this. And I was just doing stuff about market updates and things like that. It wasn't anything tedious. You don't have to make it so dry. But the two rules are, you've got to care about it, and you have to put yourself in the position of the client seeing this, right? Does the client care about 20% down or 5% down or 3.5% down? Probably not in that true context. But when you can speak to them in a certain way about, hey, you have the opportunity to be in a position where you don't necessarily have to put an extremely high down payment, and here's why, and you can talk about it in an engaging and fun way, but really put yourself in that position, then you start relating. And I think those are the two most important things. You got a passion, you have to be able to relate. You got to be relatable. And that was where, my business started to take off, and consistently, most of my business now will come from that avenue, from social media, and then like our follow-up process while we do our loans and things like that. So so that's basically been it.
And I would say, if you're hearing this, like he's saying one direct loan, but people reaching out, right? It's like it's probably multiplied more, right? So like we understand, like there's so many times, right? I've been on social media, right? Like I've been scrolling, and I'll even see a real estate agent that I hadn't talked. I'm like, oh, I need to call them, like, right, like like reminder or something, or they're probably scrolling, and like, oh, well, I got this loan. Oh, I just saw William. Well, here, I'll send that to him or whatever. So there's a lot of times they don't even say why. So the big thing is getting out there, staying out there, staying consistent. One thing that, I want to repeat another thing that the brand doctor said, right, is he said, really there's two things that you're talking about. And that's the questions, and that's the objections. Really, that's the two things that you're really speaking about. Yeah. And you're speaking about those all the time with the passion, like you said, and the giving nature and all those things, that's going to continue to be good. And I love the point you're saying, hey, listen, I don't ask real estate agents for deals. I'm in the same mindset. Like I've told, so they know what you're calling for. If you're calling a real estate agent, right, and you're trying to add value, just like, hey, what value can I add? So like, and I have a planner that I have for my coaching clients, and it's one that lines in there in the morning is like, what value will I add? So if you're calling somebody, like, what value am I going to add? And so you're adding that value. But if you're talking to a real estate agent, it's implied that you do business, and like if they like you, they see value, they send you business. You only ask people that don't normally do, or not in the business, right? Like if you're talking to a family or friend, you can ask them directly, right? But because they're not going to, you're just talking to them in general and having a conversation. They're going to go, oh yeah, I need to refer him somebody. But a real estate agent, like, right, like be different. That the way you be different is add value and not go, hey, I really need your next deal. It's like, man, like That's like
Yeah.
commission breath all over you. It's not real value, and they
Exactly.
know what you do. They know that you would take your next deal. Like, do you really need to say, "I'll take your next deal"? Like, they understand that you would take your next deal or whatever. So it's not
Yeah.
it's just adding value, and you don't have to ask for it. Like I don't even know how many real estate agents I've ever asked for a deal. Like, I mean,
And
I just
it,
don't.
yeah, exactly. And and I think people feel some sort of way about that. If you come from a sales background, and I think you and I both come from sales backgrounds, you're taught many different things in sales, right? Good, bad, ugly, and different. Like there's many things that you get taught. Um, and I think from a place of like trying to relate to somebody, when you are, there's being hungry, but you can be hungry in subtle ways. You want to be hungry, pick your phone up every single time an agent calls. You want to be hungry, if an agent texts you, then text them right back immediately. Like if you want to be in a position like you want to show somebody you're hungry, they give you a lead, call them up ASAP. Then you follow up ASAP. Those are ways of communicating
Right.
intangibly, subtly, that you're hungry. Um, the one thing I will say, and this is actually really cool that you touched on it, is when I did start to do this, right, when I was at Movement, one of the ways that I would subtly do this is I would tell them, hey, look, one of the things that we're really good at, because this is what Movement, and I know we're talking to a lot of companies, and I don't mean to, but it's
It's
just because
okay.
we have that related background. But what Movement was really good for me was it introduced me to the ideology of a rescue loan, because I had no idea what a rescue loan was. I didn't know that that concept even existed, and that is what brought my bit. Like that was my nugget, if you wanted to call it that, right? Because you're competing with a whole bunch of different people. So where's your value add? My value add was, yeah, my videos and things like that, but it progressively grew through the fact that I was doing deals that in the beginning of the deal I didn't know if I can close it, and by the end of the deal I was I was a full fledged almost expert in that one scenario, because I had to go so deep into it in the beginning stages to show that, hey, is this something that we can actually rescue? Where did the other lender drop the ball? Are we looking at this from every single angle? And that's where Movement was phenomenal, because they allowed me to honestly flourish in a way where I probably wouldn't have if I was at another lender that just say, hey, you throw it in the underwriting queue for 14, 15 days, it'll be done. I mean, I was at a company that was literally closing deals in 7, 8 days, right? And that aspect of it, that pressure of, hey, can you get this done? I don't know, but let me make a few phone calls. Let me talk to the underwriting desk. Let me get this done. And what spawned out of that was, I became a lot more confident about what I could do and my abilities. B, I had content. I was able to talk about certain things that I wasn't able to talk about before, because of the fact that I had just gone through it, and something I may have not even known, right? And and C, what it did was it allowed me to, there's a big opportunity in this market where, and I think all markets, where we just chase the buyer's agents, right? We don't
Yeah.
necessarily go after or engage or communicate really well with the listing agents, and I think there's gold there,
Right.
because if you do a really good job in the deal, or if you, in this case, I rescue deals. If I did it in 7 days, you think that person's not like, you think they would not be okay with having a conversation?
Right.
How did we do this? Let's talk about, let's just have a coffee. Let's do it. So for me, when I when we talk about the business that's had through videos, I'm I'm so direct to consumer one, but I'm in a school of thought that probably, and I'm averaging about 13, 14 loans now a month. I would say I would say a good, now, in context of everything, about 60 to 70% of my business is all generated, or at some point has all been generated through social media. I
Wow.
would not have the voice that I have now if it wasn't for social media. There's no way, no
That's
doubt
awesome.
about it. I'm a guy who just came to this market less than 5 years ago. I've been in the market for 8, but realistically in this business for less than 5,
Yeah.
and one of the most competitive markets ever. We have the largest real estate license, real estate agents in all of America in Miami. So there's a lot there's a lot out there, but there's also a lot that a lot of people who don't do business, right? And you can go after the wrong people and you go after the wrong people, but when people start going after you and people start engaging with you and people start asking questions that are actually producing, that's when the game changes. And that's where social media became a magnet for me. So I can directly correlate, truthfully, a good 60 to 70% of my business is directly correlated to social media.
That's
Because
awesome.
if I pick off all the agents that I work with right now, all the business that I've closed, and we're just talking closed business. We're not talking about loans. We're not talking about pipeline. We're not talking about any of that stuff, right? We're just talking closed business
Mm-hmm.
and relationships. I'm going to attribute it to at least 60 to 70% of the relationships that I have now. And I would not be able. There's not enough Zillow spend. There's not enough, advertising and co-marketing. There's not enough of that for me to be able to do that, especially at the time when I was doing it.
Right.
So when people talk about, what's a free way to do certain things or what's an inexpensive way to do certain things, invest in yourself, right? Invest in coaching, right? Because we'll get into that in a little bit because coaching has completely changed my life. B, invest in the things that you're passionate about, right? So my family I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about this business, even though it's very demanding and it's stressful. I'm still passionate about it. Every single, this is not for the faint. This is not for the weak, right? But if you genuinely love what you do, you're gonna be successful in it if you can pursue and continue pursue it and pursue it and pursue it. So in that same context, I feel like, when I initially did it, I didn't do it because I wanted the business. I did it because I knew that I needed to have an outlet that would allow me to, if I can do two videos or three videos in a day, and that would take 2 or 3 hours, then that's 2 or 3 hours of, how many people can I call in that time frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of programs that will go out there that'll tell you, you got to call 100 people in a day or something like that. And I'm still a big advocate of using the phone. The old adage is, the heaviest piece of equipment in any office is the telephone, right? Because it is. It's uncomfortable. There's no doubt about it. But what happens with social media is that when people start recognizing you, right? Because it was always recognition first. People didn't engage with me until they recognized me. And when I started to go to networking events, when I started to pretty much take what I was doing outside, whether it was an open house, whether it was going to a realtor event for awards or anything like that, what I was trying to do was I was trying to make myself known, right? But I was trying to do it my way. And my way was a little bit different, I feel, than the way that other people were doing it. And I felt like that was different. And as time passed and as things progressed, people were like, oh, yeah, here's Will. He has a lot of followers. Or here's Will. He's a mortgage man, or he talks about this, or he talks about that. And I started realizing that when I go to these events, I was familiar with the person already because we had already engaged on social media, right? And I didn't know that person, but I felt like I knew them, and vice versa. They felt like they knew me. People would come up out of nowhere. Hey, Will, you're Will, right? Will Caban, mortgage man. Yeah. What's going on? And it would just naturally spawn into conversation. And never once would it be, in direction of asking for that business. It was just more, hey, we should get together sometime, talk, and go from there. And that's genuine. That was a genuine perspective that I had. Is I wanted to be in a position where I didn't feel like, I was relying on somebody.
Yeah.
And I can get into the story of how I actually started to catapult really heavily on that, because that's actually what drove it. Was I was relying on one agent, and I can get into it if you want. It could be a quick
Well,
story, but
I know we're running a little bit out of time, but no,
no, I'll go for it.
no, man. I tell you, I love the transformation from, you think about it, 4.5 years ago. It's kind of funny. It actually is really funny to think about. Us both. Their movement. I hadn't closed a loan yet, and you came over, hadn't closed a loan yet with like the new setup, and
Yep.
going from the banking, and you know here we are, 4.5 years later. The income
It,
I've been able to generate from it is crazy. I never would have thought that it would be the case. And, it's just,
It's wild, man.
but it's with the thought of like I've never, I don't get up in the morning, right? Like I don't get up in the morning and be like, man, I just make all this money and this is like money, money, money. Money is a
Yeah.
great thing. And I love it. Like, right. Like I love to have a good income and build up, I was the other day, one of my, assistant said I was bougie. That's like, well, I was like, well, I mean, here, I was like, well, I mean, I do have a lot of $100 pairs of shoes that I never did like previously. It's kind of funny, but I'm not, I like some good stuff, but I don't go crazy on a lot of stuff. I'm pretty,
No,
but
I
I
hear
do
you,
have my
man.
Jordans on right now. Jordan still's better than LeBron, by the way, guys.
There you go, man. I second
six
that.
to
I
four,
second that.
6-4. But that's not what gets me up in the morning, right? Like having the nice things,
No.
or the it's just that the value and like how else can I help somebody? How else can I get better? How it's evolution of getting better, and through that is just helping other people. And this is why I love having people like yourself on. That's man, you just I'm inspired with the guests I have on, because we all have these things to offer that we do better than the other person, and I'm always learning. Like I don't have somebody on and think, wow, I'm always learning. It's just
100%.
great to
100%.
hear ways of going, and there's so many ways to go about business. There's different ways, but it never ends. It always starts and ends with somebody trying to create value, and somebody just getting up and believing in themselves, investing in themselves to grow. I mean, really, there's only a few things that are always in a center nucleus of every single successful mortgage loan officer or real estate agent or entrepreneur or whatever. There's a few of those things that are just nucleus that every one of us have. Then we have all these ways that we go about, growing the business. And that's like, coaching is like, it's never like, okay, you have to do it a certain way. It's about being powerful, and the powerful message is you got energy. You get energy from somewhere off the gates. It's either, it could be workout, vision, just having a just great massive vision, which gives you energy. It could be prayer, meditation, something that's giving you energy out of the gates. Prospecting. You have to do prospecting every single day. You have to be, and then you have to do marketing. You have to, with the branding you got going on, and then you have to pour into your relationships. And I tell you what, if you take care of those things, man, things are good. But you have to have the four. You have to continue to drive forward. But as we go here, I know we got to wrap it up. It's such a pleasure. You shared some really, really deep, good thoughts here.
I appreciate
if you had
that.
one thing to tell the audience to go out there and do, or just any last nugget, what is it?
So if and we're talking to the loan officer community, so the one thing I will tell you to do, and we're talking whether you're experienced, whether you're not experienced, is understand that you can't do this by yourself. There's no way that you can do this by yourself, right? And I've been fortunate enough to understand that, any great athlete, we're talking LeBron, we're talking Kobe, we're talking Jordan, any great athlete has always had a coach. A coach doesn't need to be a person that can dunk, or jump as high as you. Coach needs to be somebody who knows your ability, knows your effort, knows your value, and can draw and extract that out of you. So if there's anything that I learned, and I learned as late, unfortunately, is investing in a coach, someone that you really feel passionate about, someone that really aligns with what you're trying to do, is probably the best investment that you can make, because this is a very lonely business. There's no doubt about it, right?
Yeah.
It's a very lonely business. The more successful you become, you start thinking of, how do I get to that next level? And you start realizing that there's not that many people that will really, there's a lot of people that are there, but there's not a lot of people that will share that with you, right? And having a coach, having that dynamic of checks and pluses, it was huge for me. So if there's anything that I could ever tell anybody, is invest in a coach. Invest in somebody who really believes in what you do, who's really passionate, who's been in your shoes. That's the most important thing, and is still in your shoes to say, hey, this worked, this didn't work. Hey, let's try this together, right? There's that difference factor there. So that's the top end thing that I would definitely say that has changed my business dynamically is I invest in a coach. My coach, she works to my personality, and she's been phenomenal. And to that end, I feel like if you've tried to coach, this is to the people who have tried to coach and maybe hasn't worked out, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? Because some of these, some of the professional players, they're not good or great until they get to that team where that coach is, directly aligned with what their vision is and sees exactly what it is that they're trying to do and pulls it right out of them.
Yeah.
So don't shortchange yourself and say, yeah, no, I tried coaching. It's just an expensive waste of money. No, what's an expensive waste of money is not spending the money and just thinking that you can just continue to push along and hit these ceilings without having that guidance. And I honestly, truly believe that is, the underlying factor of anyone's success.
Absolutely. Well, true pleasure, man.
Pleasure's all mine.
I'm looking forward to continue to connect and watch you grow. It's a beautiful sight. Your family's lucky to have you, as a provider and someone that's passionate, not only about the business, but passionate about life and for them. So, true pleasure
Likewise.
to have you on here. I greatly appreciate it, taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on here.
Likewise, man. Likewise. And I really appreciate it. So thank you guys so much. You have an awesome day.
Absolutely. Remember, guys, limited risk equals limited income.